For an entire generation now, gamers have waited for Switch ports of Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD to no avail. Despite endless rumors and a shrinking number of Nintendo Directs left in the Switch generation to make the announcement, these two classics remain only playable on the Wii U. Over time, I noticed commentary or articles out there questioning why all other great Wii U games had been ported over, but not the two Zeldas, and I began to wonder if this was true. Were there other buried treasures that still deserve a port besides Zelda? After revisiting and trying several new titles, there's one surprisingly enjoyable game that stuck out to me as the most obvious candidate for a Switch port. In fact, I'm surprised it hasn't been brought over yet, and that game is Yoshi's Woolly World. Please remember to subscribe to support the channel for more retro and current game analysis content and beyond, especially Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So Yoshi's Woolly World is an entry in the long-running Yoshi game series, which includes titles like the ultimate classic Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Story, Yoshi's Island DS, and so on. Notably, Yoshi's Crafted World was released for the Switch in 2019. However, I think Yoshi's Woolly World is one of the best entries in the series and would feel right at home on the Switch next to Crafted World. This title would work well in both docked and handheld mode, like many Switch games. It also sits around a 78 critic score and 85 user score on Metacritic, so it was obviously fairly well received, generally speaking. Now, Woolly World is a very simple and very easy game, but it's full of cozy visuals, some clever levels and ideas, and plenty of Nintendo charm. Every level in the game is made out of yarn elements, such as threads and pins and balls of yarn and stitched surfaces. There's plenty of clever uses of this aesthetic, such as tugging on threads to unravel pieces of the level, swinging from strings, rolling on balls of yarn, and so on. You jump through 6 worlds and many levels as Yoshi in an attempt to save the other Yoshis, and of course defeat Bowser Jr. It's classic Nintendo platforming with plenty of collectibles along the way to add a little bit of challenge and extend the gameplay for completionists. The main problem with this game is simply its difficulty. The first half of the game is extremely easy, and the second half never offers more than a limited challenge. The game even includes a casual mode and badges that can make it even easier. I wish they had included a hard mode instead. I think that would make the entire game better. Obviously, this is designed to work for a younger demographic, but it seems like that difficulty could have scaled up fairly easily. There are also a couple too many labyrinth or maze-style levels in the game that overstay their welcome, but I digress. Overall, the game does move along nicely. So I'm actually surprised this game hasn't been ported yet. If I had to guess, this game probably didn't sell that well, given that it was released in 2015 when the Wii U was already in decline and had a very limited install base. With the Switch's current massive number of players, it seems like Nintendo could port this over and maybe sell a couple million more units as an easy win. It's been over 5 years since the Switch's own Crafted World released, so the two games wouldn't really be competing with each other. Speaking of Yoshi's Crafted World, I do think Woolly World is actually the better game between the two, which is another reason it deserves this port. I enjoyed Crafted World to some extent, but I always found the gameplay and aesthetic to be a little slow-moving. Many levels feel a bit stiff or limited from a gameplay perspective and could use a little more secondary animation or energy. Woolly World, on the other hand, feels much more organic from a gameplay perspective, with softer, more fluid movements, more interactive environments, and honestly just a nicer aesthetic overall in my opinion. If you compare the footage back and forth here, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. Crafted World does get more interesting as it goes on, but ultimately just feels a bit lifeless to me in comparison. I also like that Woolly World focuses specifically on yarn with a very targeted aesthetic, whereas Crafted World feels like kind of a mix of cardboard and other crafting materials that just isn't as interesting. Woolly World also has a lot of callbacks to Yoshi's Island specifically, and just feels like a more natural extension of the series. The other sort of strange thing about this situation is that Nintendo invested time and energy creating Yoshi's Crafted World only a few years after Woolly World, which means there must have at least been decent enough player interest to warrant a sequel. However, it's also interesting then that Nintendo chose to create a sequel in the first place, rather than just porting the game over and pretending it was new or adding more levels and content like they did with other franchises such as Mario Kart 8 and Super Mario 3D World. I could easily see a Yoshi's Woolly World Deluxe where they add a couple more worlds and further polish up the visuals a bit. I also definitely think this game should be priced at $40, but I'm sure Nintendo would go the full $60 as usual. So what do you think? Did you play this game and enjoy it? Does it deserve a spot in the Switch's library? What final Wii U games would you like to see ported besides Zelda or maybe Yoshi? Leave a comment and let's discuss.